When Leighton was conceiving the house, he worked very closely with his architect, and they very deliberately sought out contemporary designers. So Walter Crane, a very versatile, best known as an illustrator now, but he designed the gold mosaics around this interior. Sculptors and artisans who could all contribute to that single vision for the house. My name's Daniel Robbins and I'm the Senior Curator here at Leighton House Museum. The house was built by Frederic Leighton, perhaps the most preeminent artist of the Victorian period, as his studio and his domestic accommodation. And what started on a relatively modest basis ended up being described as a private palace of art, not just because of the extraordinary environment of the house itself, but it was crammed with his collections of fine and decorative art. And where we're sitting is perhaps the most spectacular part of the house, which was a later extension called the Arab Hall, built between 1877 and 1881, really as a means of displaying the exceptional collection of tiles that Leighton had collected and others had collected on his behalf, mostly from Damascus and mostly dating from the end of the 15th century, beginning of the 16th century. We were approached when London was going to host the Qatar 2014 year, and there was an idea of an exhibition that had happened in Doha between the Turquoise Mountain and the Museum of Islamic Art there, as to whether we might be a venue and host that exhibition in a slightly different form, but host it here at the museum. And so that happened, and it was a wonderful exhibition which wasn't confined to the main gallery space, but spread through into these interiors as well. So that was our first involvement. Well, this house is an extraordinary fusion of art, architecture and design, and we see part of what makes it special is the imprint of many different bits of creativity that have gone into the making of it. So here we are sitting surrounded by these extraordinary hand-painted tiles, and it just fits very neatly with this place to have the idea of making and celebrating making, and for that to be not limited by region or type, but what was so often said about this house is it was itself an extraordinary fusion of influences and sources brought to bear on its design and its making. And so that all plays very naturally into seeing it as a place where art and craft is celebrated, and part of the purpose of it, or the essential purpose of it, is where Leighton's own art was made. And so sort of the sense of making is something very important to the history of the house. But we're currently in the middle of an £8 million refurbishment, not of these historic interiors, but of the 20th century additions that were built onto the house once it had become a museum. And we're thrilled to be working with Turquoise Mountain on the pieces that will sit, furniture pieces that will sit within the reception space we're creating, including the fittings for the shop and for the cafe, which we hope will give, as immediately the people come into the museum, will immediately signal that there is something unique about this environment and something that suggests this fusion of East and West that is played out within the house that Leighton created.